Okay. I don't know how many Godard films I've reviewed on this channel, but for some reason it's quite a lot. I didn't really expect myself to watch so many Godard films the last 2 years. But definitely, Godard's definitely one of my favorite directors. You can watch any of my other videos on why I like Godard, why I like his style, why I think he was a genuine revolution in cinema. But for this video, let's talk about something else in the beginning. I feel like films are mostly about flaws in humanity. It's always kind of based on how we are doing this wrong, how we are terrible people, how we are just not perfect, and then we go on with that idea in mind. People like Woody Allen would make comedy and humor out of the flaws in humanity. Francis Ford Coppola, would make epic dramas based on the flaws of humanity. Spielberg would try to bring out morals from the flaws. Hitchcock would make some thrilling element out of the fact that we are flawed and our actions kind of bring consequences that will bring harm to our lives. Pasolini would be absolutely freaking raw about the flaws, and he'll just show it in probably the most realistic perspective you will ever want from a filmmaker. And I feel like with Weekend, Godard is being Pasolini in this movie because this whole film is basically a huge spiral of the decay of humanity. It's not as raw and as, to a certain extent, disgusting as Pasolini's movies, but I feel like, like the film, like the scene with the long road scene, the whole huge panning shot from the end of the road, and as we move on, we see a lot of things. We see people yelling stuff at other people because there's a big traffic jam. We see kids playing all over the place. We see old people playing chess on the road. And at the end, we see that there's this big, terrible crash happening and people are dead. Kids are dead, mothers are dead. And for some reason, the people that we saw before couldn't really give a damn about this whole situation. They're just living their lives. They're very absent-minded about death being right in front of them because it's not about them. It's about them. It's about the people who are dead, and they don't care if death is that imminent, that death is that close in our everyday lives. They're just living their lives because they're not dead. It's not about them. And the fact that people can be that absent-minded about other people, and just the fact that we don't really see other people as people at times. We just kind of see ourselves as the main character of this whole big film of our lives is kind of the basis of our flaws. We're self-absorbed. We are absolutely narcissistic. And ironically, at the same time, we're very cynical about other people as well. And we only care about ourselves at times. This film, at many moments, really point out those flaws. There is the moment where a person just goes by and asks this other person, are you in the movie or are you in real life? And the person answers by saying, we're in the movie, which is obviously the wrong answer. And the people passing by says, oh, you're so absent-minded. But these main characters actually think they're in this film. They're aware to a certain extent. Maybe that's the stylistic value of the film, but on a moral value, they think they're in the film. They think they're the main characters. They think they matter, and the other people don't. And there's also this group of hippie gorillas in the forest, and their code names are all done with classic movies. One's called The Searchers, the other person's called Battleship Potemkin, the other person's called Johnny Guitar, and you can see how self-absorbed and fantasized these people are, and it's just kind of the basis of the movie. We are self-absorbed. We don't live in reality at times, and I also like that there's this huge contrast going on. Even with the smallest moments, with the whole of the film is really just a giant contrast. At first, we start with the decay of humanity right at the beginning. We see people killing each other for no real good reason. They're just kind of having an argument in the parking lot, and then boom, somebody brings out a freaking, what was it? Just an object that could kill a person. Let's just say that. I think it was a huge pipe, and somebody's dead. Somebody, a kid is calling names at adults in the parking lot, and the adult kind of screams at the kid, and the mother comes out, and the father comes out with the shotgun. Death is such an empty thing in this world that it's done in such a light way. It's depicted in such a light way that the point of the film is kind of right there. People don't care about each other. But when they're about to die, suddenly everything comes into perspective. That's one of the things that you can see in this movie. And that's the huge contrast. Because at first, it starts with the decay. We see the decay happening. At the end, they're just not even people anymore. Death doesn't even exist in their minds. At the end, let me tell you, this is not even a spoiler. The main character, the woman main character in this movie, at the end, is eating her husband. I'm not going to tell you how that happens. It just does. And she's so blasé about it. Like, the contrast is there. The build-up to that the spiral of the decay of humanity has been finished. The woman's eating her lover. And she's totally blasé about it. The human element of her life is gone. And small contrasts build up this huge spiral as well. There's a huge contrast between beauty and the grotesque. People die, but when they die in this really beautiful fashion at times. People who are beautiful die in absolutely terrible ways. People who are innocent, there's this innocent beauty to certain people, and they just die in the most horrible way possible. There's this girl who's kind of living in her own Alice in Wonderland world, and she dies by burning in fire. Like, it's absolutely terrible. And there's also the contrast between intellectual people and primitive people. People who spout out really just smart words about politics, about philosophy. They talk about Marx. They talk about art. They talk about a lot of things that most people would not understand at all. But at the end, what's the point of them being intellectual when they're eating people? Like, there are certain cannibals. There are cannibals in this movie, and these are intellectual cannibals. But what's the point of them being intellectual if they're just being as primitive as any other, form of existence ever? And every single person in this movie has a purpose, but all the purpose they have is an absolutely disgusting purpose. The main two characters are on the road to kill their family members for money. That's the main purpose that they start with. It's an absolutely terrible thing to do, obviously, but they do it in such a blasé way. They talk about it in such a blasé way that you see that the decay has already begun. It's not the decay doesn't begin in the middle of the film. It's already begun. It's begun before the film even happened. That's the point of the film, and it's done in such a visceral way. The only problem with this film is that, and this film basically is a double-edged sword. Everybody's depicted in such a grotesque and disgusting way that there is a lack of an observer here. The only observer within the, communication between the viewer and the film is really just the viewer. The person who's watching the film is the only observer in the film. So obviously, the person who's watching the movie doesn't really have anybody to connect with. That's really the problem of the movie. You don't really have anybody to connect with within the film, and you don't have anybody in the film to say, "Oh my God, this is absolutely terrible." But the point of the film is that everybody's terrible. So it's kind of a hard film to watch because there's nobody you can relate to at all. But although it's challenging, it's still a really good film because the point is done in such a visceral way. It's not heavy-handed at all. It's not hammed into your brain. It's done with visuals and actions, all done in a very sophisticated manner, showing very unsophisticated things. So yeah, I think the film's really good. Not the most entertaining film in the world, but it's easily a 3.5 out of 4. I can see why people say it's a really good Godard movie. So yeah, 3.5 out of 4. Weekend. Bye.